Hi guys, Vicious Cosplay here. I was thinking about doing a detangling video since I've been working on my Dragonair wig, and it's a very long wig. So I've come across one of the issues is that in the process of brushing it a little lazily with my non-wig brush, I tangled the shit out of it. The ends are horribly frayed on some sections, to the point that it's just a, tangled poofy mess, and once you get to this point it's very hard to deal with, and most solutions are, well, I should just cut the fibers. They've been stretched, they've been curled, there is nothing more that you could do with it. I've however found that with a little TLC, strike that, a lot of TLC, you can actually bring your wig pretty much back to life. So, a few tools you'll need: your wig brush, some clips, I prefer ones with nice teeths, a detangler. My favorite is Johnson's No More Tangles. This is very safe on wigs. This doesn't dry out like a normal conditioner detangler, so I tend to like that more. And just in case you get some nasty knots, a pair of scissors. Sometimes you just can't get the knot out. A lot of patience. Here we go. probably say there was about maybe 5 hours of work just cleaning this wig up. Wigs with long hair with cats. But yeah, all of the wefts now are completely contained within braids, making it easier for me to A, section it off when I need to pull it into a high ponytail, and then B, makes it a lot easier to just be able to separate them. Put a couple wefts at the top as I begin to work around here. As you can see, I'm still pinned. This was fun remembering while doing it. I'm a little derpy because... Anyway, yeah, no, it will definitely make working with the wig a lot easier. This process is really good for reviving tangled wigs, especially long ones. You know, the moment you step outside and there's that single breeze, dead. Always remember, always better to work with a small bit around a knot than try to brush out the entire wig at once. Always work from the bottom to the top. With the smaller the portion you brush through, much easier it is to pull it apart. And trust your fingers, they are very great at pulling apart knots in wefts. Also remember, this does not work on wigs. Your hot iron does not work on wigs that are not heat resistant. So always make sure to test your wig with your hot iron, small portion, to make sure that it doesn't become a melted fuzzy mess when you do it. Other than that, I got nothing. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and I hope it helps you a lot. Have a good night.